So, during my reaction to the Nintendo Switch 2 reveal trailer last Thursday, I had made kind of an offhanded, random, very quick comment during some of the final splash page screens of the trailer. The one specific to detailing how the console is going to be backwards compatible and what that's going to look like with games I can play on the Switch and the Switch 2. And it was, the trailer was playing in real time, so it was going quick. I didn't have a lot of time to, actually speak out my thoughts. I just very quickly mentioned how I'm actually looking forward to mostly Switch 2 exclusive games in the first year, and that I hope the first year of the Switch 2 isn't relying heavily on cross-gen games. Now, to me, in my brain, that sentiment made a lot of sense. But there was also a comment in that video that I just happened to notice where someone very simply asked, why don't you want cross-gen games? Or something to that effect. It was very straightforward, very simple, nothing crazy. And at first I thought it was kind of a strange question because it just made sense to me what I meant when I said that. But I also then thought about it for a few minutes and it's like, okay, I think I understand why someone would ask this or why they might be confused. And I figured that would be a good reason for me to talk this out more in a video and have a discussion with you guys on that today. So first and foremost, I think it's important to just recognize how great it is that the Switch 2 will be backwards compatible. Of course, they confirmed that via a tweet from the Nintendo Japanese Twitter account many months ago that I don't remember how they phrased it, but this is Furukawa. Just want to let you know you can play Switch games, digital and digital profiles and everything. It's going to switch over to the Switch 2. We'll tell you more later. That's a quick paraphrase, but he said that many months ago. Everyone was like, great, backwards compatibility confirmed. Now, at the time, to my surprise, there were some people confused on whether or not that also meant physical games. I never doubted it. To me, it was very clear what they meant. Digital and physical games, physical Switch cartridges, would all transfer and be playable on the Switch 2. That was great news. Also, our Nintendo profiles and all that stuff, and probably our purchases, that's all going to transfer over too. We're in the era where that stuff is just kind of a necessity, and it would have really hurt Nintendo in the Switch 2 if that wasn't possible. And so either way, just for me, when he first made that tweet, many months ago, I knew what they meant. It's like, okay, great. It's backwards compatible fully. There was no doubt in my mind that Switch 1 cartridges would be able to plug right into the Switch 2 and work just by default. Now, beyond that, that kind of feeds us into the cross-generation conversation. And I think that a lot of us expect one or two, or maybe even several games to release on the Switch 2 early on that will be cross-generation. We've seen Nintendo do that a few times in the past. Zelda Twilight Princess was a cross-generation release between the GameCube and the Wii. Breath of the Wild, of course, was a cross-gen release that actually released on the exact same day for both the Wii U and the Nintendo Switch. And, we're not going to talk about things like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and, other Wii U ports, because that's like a port, and it's also, it was like a different game in its own way. It's like the same game, but a different game and new content. So the Wii U port situation is a little bit different. But Breath of the Wild, for sure, was like a cross-gen release. Now, leading into the Switch 2, I think there's one main title we've all kind of zeroed in on that we expect has the best shot at being a cross-generation release, where there will be a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 version of this game, and it is my baby, my darling, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. Obviously, anything is still possible, and I can't say that I know anything for sure, because nobody knows anything for sure, but I'm going to maintain what I've been saying for probably, close to 2 years now, that my gut feeling tells me Metroid Prime 4 will be a cross-gen release. There will be a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 version of the game, or bare minimum, there will be a direct patch and upgrade available for the Switch 1 cartridge that will upgrade it to an enhanced Switch 2 version of that game. Whether or not that's a free patch and upgrade or something that we purchase for 10 or 15 bucks, I've made this comparison before. A few PS5 games did this, and I really kind of liked the way they handled it. Death Stranding, Ghost of Tsushima, I believe Last of Us Part 2 ended up getting something like that as well. And if they did that, that's fine. I'll buy a $60 Switch 1 Metroid Prime 4 cartridge and then pay another 10 or 15 bucks to upgrade it to the next generation Switch 2 version. Absolutely. And so the point of this is, I think that Metroid Prime 4, partly because it's one of the only titles we know Nintendo has officially confirmed, is the title a lot of people are looking at and say, if there's going to be a cross-gen game for the Switch 2, it's definitely going to be Metroid Prime 4, and of course, I agree with that. But there's also a great chance, if Prime 4 is a cross-gen game, that it won't be the only cross-gen game. We've all now seen the new Mario Kart for the Switch 2. It's the only thing we've seen. What are the chances that that game is also cross-generation? I actually think, I'm not going to lie, I'm not going to make a hard prediction here, but I will say I think there is a very, very good chance that that game also is a Switch 1 and a Switch 2 game. And I know, again, the backwards compatibility thing kind of makes this confusing. So I'm talking about this before we have a lot of information. We will learn more in the April Nintendo Direct, and maybe a lot of what we learned renders this conversation moot, but that's fine. That's still 2.5, 3 months away, so I'm going to talk about it now based on what we do know. And so the cross-gen thing might make things muddy, where maybe they only make Switch titles and you're just expected to put them into your Switch 2 or whatever that is. But I think that Prime 4 will be cross-gen in the base definition of cross-generation, and I think that Mario Kart 9 or the new Mario Kart very much could be the same thing. I mean, let's be real. That game looked visually a touch better than Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, absolutely, but I don't think it looks like a game that the Switch 1 can't run, based off of the little footage we saw. When we see more footage, that might change. Maybe we realize, oh my god, this game is so beautiful, the Switch 1 would catch on fire trying to run it. I mean, again, we only know what we know now, but I personally think, based off of the 12 seconds of footage that's in the Switch 2 reveal trailer, I did not see a Mario Kart game that couldn't run on the current Switch. That's my current perception and opinion right now. And so, whether it's Prime 4, whether it's Mario Kart, whether it's other titles, I think that we need to be prepared for maybe a collection or a handful of games that will release in the first, launch window, or maybe even full launch year of the Switch 2, that might be cross-generation, and we're getting games that were maybe developed for the current Switch that get ports or slight upgrades or versions that are on the Switch 2. And so this is where more of my personal opinion comes in, okay? And I'm somebody who, to a degree, I'm totally okay with that. I think that makes sense. Like, especially early on when your Switch 1 is so incredibly popular and successful. You got 146 million of them out there, 150 million by the time the Switch 2 launches, if not more. Of course, in order to help make your Switch 2 more successful, making some of your biggest early games cross-generation does make a lot of sense. And of course, third-party games, that's a different story. Indie games, that's a different story. We're really focusing, I think, on the Nintendo games for the most part here. And cross-generation early on in a console makes a lot of sense. It's smart for the business of making sure the Switch 2 is successful and people feel comfortable easily transferring from Switch to Switch 2. And it's also just what is kind of a normal thing. But the whole point of this very, very long diatribe and all this stuff we're blabbing about here today is to say that one of the things I also want my Switch 2 to do in the first year is to give me games that are showcasing the power and the upgrade of the Switch 2. So, the more cross-gen games we get for the Switch 2, the more we're only seeing last-generation games running on a next-generation console. What I want are games, especially ones made by Nintendo, that are built for the ground up for the Switch 2. So, that's why I said, in the first year of the Switch 2, I hope we're not mostly getting cross-gen games. I'm going to want some Switch 2 exclusive games, and I know that some of the pushback from people will say, oh, well, a game that is made only for the Switch 2 means people won't be able to play it on their Switch 1. And to that I say, yeah, that's what new generation consoles are for. At some point, you have to cut the umbilical and you have to let go of the prior generation. You've got to make games only for the current Switch 2. Partly to sell the Switch 2, because games only available on the Switch 2 will also convince people to buy the Switch 2, and to be able to showcase what the Switch 2 can do. So hopefully this all kind of makes sense to you guys, and I'm willing to bet it does. We're all gamers here, right? We're all Nintendo fans. We know what this stuff means. I just think that it's important at the end of the day. Like I said, I'm okay for a couple cross-gen games, even my darling Metroid Prime 4 Beyond, given the situation, the development cycle, the re-reveal last June, everything going on with it. If that's a cross-gen game, whatever that looks like, I'm fine with it. Mario Kart, if it's cross-gen, I'm fine with that too. Early on, it's going to make sense. But I think by the time we get to, like, you know, if the next 3D Mario game comes like later in the year, maybe during holiday or something, you know, or by the time the next big Zelda game comes out, or if we get a new Star Fox in the first year or two or whatever, I'm going to start to want those games after like 6 to 9 months to be Switch 2 exclusive. And like I said, I already laid out the reasons why. One, it justifies the Switch 2 because cross-gen games mean you don't have to buy the Switch 2. You can just play it on your Switch 1. So I want the Switch 2 to be justified by having games that can only play on it. And I'll use Star Fox as an example. A Star Fox game built only for the Switch 2 is going to look and play and run a lot better than a Star Fox game made to run on the Switch 1 that might have been slightly, like, up-tweaked or up-resed or whatever to have a slightly better version on the Switch 2, right? That's the difference we're talking about. And so I'll be really curious to hear from you guys and understand just how many people kind of agree with me, and also to understand how much pushback I might get, because, you know, I'm not going to lie, I can see this being the kind of concept where a lot of folks might push back, because there's also a weird sentiment that's around out there where just the idea of exclusive games in any fashion, even if you're exclusive to just a certain console or piece of hardware, people don't like that nowadays. I feel like we're in this new era where maybe, I don't know, maybe a lot more recent gamers, and when I say recent, for me, that means people from the last 15 or 20 years, are just kind of, they less understand the value and the importance of exclusive games, and they think everything should be available on every platform. I think Microsoft's messaging and advertising and Game Pass this and everything is an Xbox and yada yada yada, and trying to make everything available on every screen under the sun, I think that's also kind of muddying the waters too, and I don't really like the direction that goes. And so I'm a little bit concerned that people who think that exclusive games in general are bad are going to think that a Switch 2 exclusive game is also bad because it's alienating people from experiencing it. And the only thing I'll say to that, to wrap this up, is on the surface, I understand that. There is a valuable conversation to be had, to say that the more people that can access any game, like, the better. And so, yes, that's true. A game releasing multi-platform, more people can play it. Yes, that's good. A game releasing on multiple generations, Switch 1 and Switch 2, more people can play it, and that's good too. I do agree with that. Like, the motive is certainly noble and good. Make it so more people can play this game, but that's also not how things work. And the Switch 2 can't be cross-generation forever. At some point, we have to move on to games that can only be Switch 2, taking advantage of the power, justifying the purchase of the Switch 2. And yes, I even think in the first year that should be the case. You know, like I said, I'm just speaking from my perspective. I'm not telling everyone to agree with me. For the first 6 months, maybe the first 3 or 4 big Nintendo games, I get it. They're going to be cross-gen. That's fine. That overlap is going to exist. But I think by the end of the first year of the Switch 2 existing, we better be seeing some pretty high-profile Switch 2 exclusive games for all of the reasons I listed in this video below. So that's why I said I'll be curious to hear from you guys, and also why I do expect some pushback, because I think some people will say cross-gen is better, Switch 2 exclusive games will be bad. I will vehemently disagree with that, but I do expect some people to feel that way and probably express that in the comments of this video. So this is what I had to say. These are my thoughts on this concept. This is why I'm looking forward to Switch 2 exclusive games much more than I am cross-generation Switch 2 games. So that's what I have to say. Share your thoughts below. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and I will see you next time.